In this video, I will show you how to configure a package that uses the COZYROC XML Destination Component to write composite objects to an XML file based on invoice data pulled from two tables in SQL Server. First, I'll show you the data we'll be working with. We're going to be taking data about invoices from two different tables. There are 4 customers and their information is in the first table, which is called Invoice Main Object. That table contains an invoice number, and we'll be using that column to look up the specific items purchased by that customer, which should be associated with the invoice. As you can see, each item purchased has a record in the second table, which includes an invoice number. And I want to point out that in the invoice line item table, we have 2 columns that have dollar amounts in them. And I have the data type set to decimal with a precision of 18 and a scale of 2. So that's going to be significant later when I configure the package. Now I'm in Visual Studio on the data flow. And I'm going to start out by dragging the OLEDB source onto the canvas. And I'm going to be using this to read invoice main object table. And I double click to open the editor. I already have a connection manager set up and it's already selected that. And now I just need to select the correct table, which is invoice main object. We can preview the data, and there you can see the same data we were just looking at in Management Studio. And I'm going to go over to columns because I never used address to, so I'm going to get rid of that column and not work with it in the package. And then we need to use the multicast because I want to make 2 copies basically of each record in the invoice main object table. One time we're going to just send it down to the XML destination to be written to the XML file, and another copy we're going to use to look up the specific items that should be associated with that invoice. Stay tuned to see how I complete the configuration of the package.
If you are integrating applications with SQL Server, you know it can be quite a hassle. With the COZYROC SSIS Plus REST framework, you can easily connect any web service. Create XML-defined configuration file. Process complex services with an embedded JavaScript engine. For additional power, you can use any .NET class in your code. All data is protected using the standard SSIS framework. Check the growing list of ready-to-use REST configurations. Start using the COZYROC SSIS Plus suite now. It's free for download and development in Visual Studio.
So now I'm going to use the XML destination. And I'm going to be using this, of course, to write invoices to XML file. And I'm going to double click on it to open it, and it tells me that the component has no available input columns and asks if I want to continue editing the available properties of the component, and I do, so I click yes. And I need to set up a connection manager, so I click on New, and I want to create a new file, so I choose Create File for the usage type. And then I'll browse over to the folder where I'm going to be writing that file, and it's called the XML Destination folder. So down here I will type in the name I want the file to have, which is XML Destination File. And then I click OK. And now down here I'm going to select this middle button, Load from XML Sample. So what I'm doing now is I need to tell the component what the structure of the XML file should be. So here it has already figured it out from the file I pointed it at, which was a sample file. And so it's going to have the main invoice information about the customer, and then it'll have the information about the specific items that that customer has purchased. And there's other ways you can tell it the structure. You can load from XSD schema, and then the other choice is load from XDM, an XML destination model. So I'll click OK, and I want to show you the sample XML file that I just pointed it at so that it could figure out the structure. So I've configured a file that's basically in the format that I want my XML destination to be in. So I have an invoice with all the customer information, and then I have a couple of specific line items configured under that, and this is not real data, this is just to show it the format. And I have multiple items configured, and then I also have multiple invoices configured, and that's to let the XML destination know that I will have multiple invoices and multiple invoice items. So now I'm going to configure the query component, which is a COZYROC component. I'll be using this to look up invoice items, and I'll connect an arrow from the multicast to this, and then I'll double click on query to open the editor, and I'll choose the same connection manager that I already had set up. Everything's in the same database, and then I select table/view, and now I need to choose the invoice line item table. And if we go over to columns, here you can see it's mapped the one thing that matches as far as column names, and that's the invoice number. That's what I'm using to look up the specific items. And now I'll check the checkboxes for the other 4 columns that are in that invoice line item table, because of course I want to put all that information in our XML destination file. And now I'll feed that down into the XML destination, and it offers me the query output for the output, which is fine. And then I choose the input, which is going to be invoice line item, because that's what is being fed in from the query component here. And then if we go to Multicast and click on it, we are offered another arrow, which we also connect to XML destination, and that'll be carrying down the information from the invoice main object table. So now we'll double click on the XML destination to complete our configuration of it. And we'll go to mapping, and nothing has been mapped because over here the word invoice has been appended to all the column names, and so we'll manually map those. Here is where it specifies which record we're doing the mapping for. And now we'll select the other record, which is the line item records that are coming in. And again, we need to manually map all these. So we'll map the name, the price is in a different order, the quantity, and the total cost. Now we're done configuring the XML destination. Now there's one more thing we need to do, because I pointed out before our dollars and cents. That's I need to do something special to handle that. So I just right mouse clicked on the query component. I'll go to Show Advanced Editor, and then if we go over here to Input and Output Properties, I'll expand the query output and the output columns, and here is our item price, and you can see that it picked up the precision 18 but not the scale of 2, and it's not possible for it to pick that up, so I need to manually set that for the item price and the total cost. And I only need to do it in these output columns under the query output. So I click OK, and we're done configuring our package. So I will execute it. And it was successful. I'll stop debugging. And now we'll go open up the file that we created called XML Destination File. And there you can see we have the first invoice, which just has 2 items under it. And then the next invoice has, looks like 3 items. The next invoice has a lot of items. And then the final invoice has 4 items under it. And I do want to point out that the item price and the total cost do display correctly. It has the dollars and cents with a scale of 2. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to follow us on social media, here's how you can do that.